Practices in awareness. That's the definition that I usually give when people ask me about meditation and other contemplative practices and centering techniques. I consider it a practice because it's really only a tool to become or to be aware. And once we come to that place where we're aware, then the tool itself falls away. In fact, the tool doesn't matter very much. It's just what we use that works for us that helps us to be our deepest self. I don't necessarily look at meditation and contemplative practices as a connecting with self, as a coming home to self. Just think about what it's like when you come home. There's a feeling of familiarity, there's a feeling of comfort, of safety, of security, of joy, and of fullness. And I find that with the techniques that I teach people in my workshops and retreats, that these practices that we do help us simply come home to a place we already know deep within ourselves. It's a place where all our boundaries fall away, tensions are dissolved, our health is increased. It helps us touch some of those deeper desires too, and desire is a really tricky word. Some people think that we shouldn't have desires or follow desires, that will always make us unhappy. But I find some of the deeper desires within us, a desire for happiness, a desire for peace, a desire for freedom, a desire for fulfillment or unconditional love, that those are really at the core of our being. And if we're faithful to that process of fulfilling those desires, that can be a really true path to walk. So I work with people to fulfill their deeper desires, which usually means the process of letting go of all the ideas that we have, all of the attachments that we have that don't lead to that final desire or that deeper goal of fulfillment. The word goal is really tricky too, so I use that with a certain caution, but I think it's very fair to say that we all have those desires for peace within our lives. I had to think about, how do you talk about awareness? I mean, really, what is it? Can we give a really solid definition of it that can be proven? And I have a relative who's a scientist who's even beginning to try to put together a method for discovering what awareness is in a scientific way. I lean a little bit more towards descriptors of awareness. I think that when we are aware, we are truly present, and we experience things such as unspeakable joy that goes beyond words, or a knowingness that we might call truth in the loosest sense of the word. There's a stillness within ourselves. There is a clarity in our lives. There's a sense of connection with everything around us. But these are all really descriptions of something that, while deep within us, at the core of our being, is also something quite transcendent and outside time and space. So that's how I would talk about awareness. But I love helping people grow in that process, to question it, to engage it, to dissolve the different tensions, to dissolve the ideas or the images deep within that block that kind of flow that lies at our center. And when we're in our center, then life is easy. In the Taoist sense, we flow with the stream. I find that meditation and contemplative practices are one of the most powerful transformational tools. And while many people come to me with this idea that they just can't meditate because they can't stop their mind, they usually find with time that it's not about stopping the mind, that that's simply a fruit, that the practice itself is always within their grasp. It's always something that everybody can do. You'll experience a little taste of this in this video. I've developed a 3-point process for meditation, and I'll be using this evening as well. The first point in that process is preparing the space. I have 2 ways of preparing the space. The first is preparing the space around us. Sometimes it's nice to find a quiet place when we want to become still ourselves. And right here in this yoga studio, it's very quiet. The colors are soft and subdued. The lighting is gentle. The tapestries are inspirational. That's kind of setting the outer space. And setting the outer space can be as simple as lighting a candle that becomes your candle for your practice. The second part of that first point is setting the inner space. And that's more challenging because every time we come to a practice where we would like to be present, we find that we are often consumed with the past and with the future, things that take us away from this present. So we usually have an exercise that we do in my classes that sets that inner space, that allows us the opportunity to formally let go of the past and the future, the worries, the responsibilities, the concerns, even the joys that we can be kind of addicted to or attached to as ideas of security. The second step in my own three-point process is the meditation technique itself, because they're wide and varied. Some people, Vipassana, the simple observance of bodily sensations, or the observance of the mind and its thought process, will be really helpful. And for other people, it'll be like pulling teeth to do something like that. And a guided meditation, like a color meditation or an imagination meditation, will work more effectively. For other people, sound works, but it's a playground in which that second point of that process is a chance to find out what really works for them. And once you find what works for you, then it's always yours, and you can always do it on your own. The third point in my process I call reintegration. Meditation and contemplative practices are usually a stepping away from what we're normally doing. So they set us apart. We have a busy day, we have lots of things we get done, maybe we've got a family, maybe we've got a hectic career. And when we stop for 10, 15, 20 minutes in a day, we step away. But I think it's important for people to experience that they can bring that quality of being that they experience in their meditation right into every situation in their life. So at the end of my meditation practices, we always have a way that we reintegrate ourselves so that we walk forward in that state back into whatever it is that our life, our chosen lifestyle is like. So it's a three-point process of centering is what I call it. I learned most when I was little about the value of contemplative practices. I think that children are naturally quite aware. They get lost in the moment, lost in the joy, lost in the agony, whatever it is, but they're usually fully in it without any censoring of what's going on. And I remember a lot of key moments in my own life where they were heightened experiences like that, and I was aware that I was experiencing happiness from deep within, or an understanding from deep within. The reason that I'm in the work that I do right now is because when I was little, I not only had those experiences like every other child, but then I began to observe them. And I'd be like, wow, I really like that way that makes me feel. Or, gosh, now I really understand what's going on. The simplest instances in my life, it seemed, would be a veiled reality, and the veil would be pulled back, and I'd get a little taste of what was going on in a deeper way. So when I saw what made me happy when I was little, I thought that I would really like to spend my life exploring that. I'm an Aries, and I'm an adventurer, and so the adventure, the spiritual adventure, the inward adventure, was one that has always fascinated me. It led me to lots of different life choices, but one of the major ones was joining a monastery, where I lived for close to 11 years. And the monastic tradition I chose was Carmelite, and we lived a very simple life. We lived in North Dakota for half the time, in Texas the other half. And we lived off the land, and we were devoted to silence and meditation and chant and living in community. And it was rich with experience and rich with communication. It was true formation for me. So that gave me a chance to really get to know myself, to gain greater depth of understanding of why I'm here on earth, to let me taste joy and bliss and even the uncomfortable parts of myself in a non-distracted way, in the silence. And as I grew in all of those experiences, I began to long to share that with other people, to maybe be a friend in their own journey in experiencing some of the things that I got to experience on a daily basis. So now I spend all of my time with retreats and classes and workshops, and they're all geared towards helping people have that heightened experience of themselves. One that they can have when they're drinking a cup of coffee, one that they can have when they're making a serious life decision, one that they can have when they're doing a mundane job, one that they can have when they're out in nature or with their family and friends. Because the present moment is something that is always with us. It's only a matter of coming home.